Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about a number of important developments. First of all, that relates to Pakistan-US relations, the recent letter by US President to Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. And also, we are going to talk about the Pak-China relationship overall also. Another major development that has happened is the phone call between US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. That particular call was the first ever direct conversation between the two leaders ever since in November they met during the APEC summit in California. Both the sides have described this particular conversation on the phone between the top two leaders of the two countries as constructive, candid and in-depth. A range of issues have been discussed in that particular phone call, including the counter-narcotics cooperation, ongoing military-to-military communication, talks to address AI-related risks, and continuing efforts on climate change and people-to-people exchanges. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests who are going to join us on these important developments. In the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Mustafa Haider. He is Executive Director, China-Pakistan Institute. Mr. Syed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan, foreign affairs expert. Mr. Awan, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Syed, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with Mr. Awan. Mr. Awan, we saw in the recent days, there's been an important development when we talk about US President Joe Biden writing a letter to Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, in which he said the enduring partnership between our nation remains critical to ensuring the security of our people and people around the world, and the United States will continue to stand with Pakistan to tackle the most pressing global and the regional challenges of our time. Firstly, the significance of this particular letter by President Joe Biden to the newly elected Prime Minister here in Pakistan.
Thank you very much. It is very important letter and very good initiative. As a matter of fact, we used to have a very good relation with US for 75 years. But of course, the road was not so smooth. Sometimes ups and downs we have been passing through. For the last several years, there was some restriction or some you can say the coldness from both sides. This letter has broken that ice, and maybe we are going to revive our traditional friendship with the US. It is very important initiative, and we Pakistani people welcome it. However, the nitty-gritties and details in the letter we have to discuss further, because Pakistan has its own priorities. For example, the US has indicated to work on environment and regional security and these things, but in Pakistan, the more important thing for us at the moment is our economy. We have to focus more on the economy and the situation locally in the law and order situation and relation with our immediate neighbors.
So this particular letter by President Joe Biden is being dubbed as the icebreaker, a kind of a thaw in the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and the US. We saw there were a little bit of bumps on the way, along the way in the recent past during the Pakistan Democratic Movement government. Also, the top leadership of Pakistan had tried to repair all those damages incurred during the tenure of the last government. And this particular thaw, or what challenges at this particular point in time as far as this bilateral relationship is concerned?
I think bilateral relationships are based on the mutual interest. US have some new interest in the region, especially after withdrawal from the Afghanistan. US is almost clean out from this region. They have no footing on this ground in this region. And Pakistan is a very loyal and long-lasting friend with the USA, and was protecting the American interest for years, for decades. They might have realized the importance of Pakistan after suffering a lot of cold shoulders from them and ups and downs recent past. They have realized the importance of Pakistan. This is a good initiative. We welcome it.
Right, Mr. Sayyed, let's take a stock of the recent developments that happened between Pakistan and China. On what trajectory do you see this particular bilateral relationship at this particular point in history, given the fact most recently we saw that the terrorists tried to target the Chinese nationals here in Pakistan, but the kind of response both the countries have come up with, expressing the desire to work together, especially when it comes to counterterrorism measures, and especially we also talk about the revitalization of the CPAC, the kind of will that is present on both the sides, in the ranks of the leadership on both the sides. How do you see the trajectory of that bilateral relationship at this particular point?
Firstly, the relationship between Pakistan and China is a relationship that is deep-rooted in the people-to-people relationship. Regardless of which party has been in power in Pakistan, the relationship between both the countries remains steadfast and unchanged. I believe that when CPAC was initiated in 2013, it was dubbed as this flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative. And since then, CPAC has accomplished a significant amount of projects amounting to $32 billion for a developing country that has absorption capacity issues. I think that's a lot, despite the odds, despite the challenges. As far as security challenges are concerned, they are a real concern for the Chinese. They are a real challenge, and they are a collective challenge. Terrorism, as we know, and as China also said in its joint statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a challenge which is borderless, faceless, has no religion, caste or creed, and is not limited to any one country or geographical location. It's a collective challenge, and China, as you know itself, in Xinjiang has also faced terrorism from the ETIM, which was based in Afghanistan, from the Uzbekistan Independent Movement, IMU, which is also based in Afghanistan. And in fact, Pakistan assisted in counterterrorism operations in the ex-FATA region, where there were these ETIM in the past as well. So this is a challenge that we need to address in order to successfully execute CPAC 2.0, which has SEZs, which has agriculture investments, and which has most notably the largest CPAC project, which is on the way, the ML1, inshallah. So but I do believe that the Chinese leadership and the people of China have a lot of confidence in Pakistan, and we do have to keep in mind that there is immense big power competition taking place in the world as we speak, and there is a very clear and categorical, unequivocal policy of certain countries to contain China, not only within the geographical location of China, but also in third countries, including but not limited to Pakistan. So there is a larger geopolitical context to the containment of China, whether it is through soft or hard means, and hard is of course actions like we've just seen.
Brings us to a very interesting point over here. We'll be discussing about that particular phone call between President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden also. Now, specifically talking about that bilateral relationship that's been dubbed as higher than the Himalayas, deeper than the ocean, sweeter than honey. Pakistan and China has been uniform throughout since that particular bilateral relationship was commenced. As comparison to that, when we talk about the Pak-US relationship, there have been ups and downs, and Mr. Awan has also mentioned it hadn't been as uniform as that of the relationship with the Chinese brothers we do have right next to our door. So, as you already mentioned, there is geopolitics also involved. That particular call in which there has been expression of this particular sentiment, that this particular call was very constructive. The conversation included a lot of issues. Given this particular geopolitical scenario and Pakistan's long-lasting relationship with China, and that had been uniform throughout, and not that uniform relationship with the US, and the US desire to contain China here, what options do you think Pakistan does have in this particular geopolitical situation to navigate through these two particular relationships?
Excellent question. Firstly, I want to talk about the call, which you've very pertinently raised today because it just happened a few hours ago. The call, I see it as more of a political point scoring by the Democrats and Joe Biden for its domestic consumption in the United States of America, because as you know, Trump has accused Biden, and Republicans have accused Biden and Biden administration of being very soft on China. So to stir up ultranationalism, like in India, they often criticize and attack Pakistan for political point scoring for the domestic consumption of the Indian body politic. I see there's a political dimension to that because they're in elections, in November there are elections, and Biden needs to up his poll ratings. So there's a political angle to that, domestic political angle, to come on as hard on China that I'm taking a stand for the American people and I'm criticizing Xi Jinping and I'm being, very taking a stand for the US interests.
It's just because of that criticism by the Republicans?
I think it is to improve his poll ratings because he's running up for the second term.
The Republican. So what about Pakistani authorities? When we talk about that policy of containment with China, and Pakistan's uniform relationship with China, and that bumpy relationship, ups and downs with the US.
Yes.
Now this letter, at this point in time, we do have the revitalization of CPAC, as you already mentioned. It talks about the agriculture also, the ML1 project also, a number of other issues.
I think that, you see, we have to look at from a perspective of tangibles. What have we received and what have we gained from these two relationships from a if we look at the cost benefit analysis of the Pakistan-US relationship and the Pakistan-China relationship, what are the net gains and the net loss? Let's go beyond the letter. In terms of tangibles, if you look at the political support that China has given us to our core interests, which is namely Kashmir, which is our nuclear program, which is our foreign policy position internationally, China has remained Pakistan's voice in the United Nations Security Council and has vetoed many resolutions which seek to corner us, and which other countries in the United Nations Security Council were supporting. So, and then when, as you know, when the recent annexation of Kashmir happened, China took a public stand, which was a core interest of Pakistan. The US has had more of a transactional relationship, I would say, with Pakistan. It has been a more short-sighted relationship and it has been based on need. Whenever it has required Pakistan, whether in Afghanistan in the past to fight against the Soviets or in counter-terrorism or vis-a-vis Afghan Taliban, they have remembered Pakistan. As far as China is concerned, it has not been as tactical as it has been with the US. It's been more strategic, long-term relationship based on mutual support of core interests. And mind you, Pakistan has also extended the reciprocal support to China. Just an excellent example would be Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakad's visit to China, where he addressed the Uyghurs in Urumqi in Xinjiang, which you know is a flashpoint by external powers. It's considered a fault line in China, and he said that the Chinese Muslims are very lucky to be in Xinjiang and within the rule of the Communist Party of China, because they've been given such an excellent public good of a good life.
Very important point highlighted, Mr. Sayyid. Let me bring in another guest into the show, Dr. Talat Shabbir, Director at China-Pakistan Studies Center of Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Dr. Shabbir, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Where do you see this particular bilateral relationship of Pakistan and China standing at this point in history, when we talk about the revitalization of CPAC on one side, and then the resolve expressed by the authorities in both the countries in the wake of that heinous act that took place in Bisham targeting the Chinese engineers?
Thank you, Jawad. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I think this is a very important time for both Pakistan and China. In Pakistan, because we have recently elected a new government. There's a new government, new dispensation in place in Islamabad, and they look forward to revive or push forward the CPAC projects or CPAC as a whole project. Of course, these are trying times also, because recently we had a terrorist incident, where we had an incident years ago. So I think we are in a little complex situation, but it was very heartening to see, to hear a statement by Chinese Foreign Ministry after this attack that they would continue to work with Pakistan, and they would continue to face this challenge of terrorism, and they will continue to help people of Pakistan to grow and take full advantage of CPAC projects. I think both the governments are on board with regards to terrorist incidences in Pakistan, and with regard to speeding up various projects of CPAC. One important thing is that this is, I think, a test case for Mr. Shahbaz Sharif, Prime Minister of Pakistan, to achieve what has not been achieved in last couple of years with regard to CPAC. We need to bring in a mechanism whereby we can speed up the projects that were undertaken in first phase, and in second phase, when we talk of industrial revival or industrialization, we need to speed up work on industry also, especially on special economic zone. So I think while dealing with the terrorist situation in our country, and one good thing is that our Chinese friends do realize that low intensity conflict is a very complex situation where you face terrorist acts, and there is kind of a disruption where not only regional powers are involved, but there's an international effort also to undermine CPAC project. I think both the countries are up to face these challenges, and we are very hopeful that in near future we will be able to see or hear some good news with regards to CPAC.
Right. Dr. Shabbir, when we talk about the security challenge and the low intensity challenge on the security front, as you already mentioned, when we talk about the resurgence of terrorism here in Pakistan, ever since Kabul was taken over by the Afghan Taliban, we've also seen some statements coming from the Chinese leadership also regarding its position on Afghanistan. Now, the terrorist or insurgent groups based in Afghanistan pose a challenge to the regional countries, most notably when we talk about Pakistan and China, both in particular. After this particular recent Basham attack, how do you think what could be the measures or the strategies the Chinese and the Pakistanis could join hands when it comes to impressing upon the Afghan Taliban that, look, this is the threat that emanates from the Afghan soil, and this is your international responsibility in order to dismantle all those safe havens of the terrorist groups over there?
I think this is also very important. Now, the triad that you mentioned, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China, this is very important. This is important from the point of view of Belt and Road Initiative, which China would like to advance, but in order for advancing Belt and Road Initiative, I think peace in Afghanistan is a must. And this is also a fact that anything wrong happening in Afghanistan will surely impact Pakistan and China. For one, China does not want conflict or disruption in its periphery, because in order for China to become a regional power or a global power, or an economic power, or expand its Belt and Road Initiative, or think of expanding CPAC to Afghanistan and Central Asia, peace in Afghanistan is very important, and China realizes. Now, the emergence of terrorist groups in Afghanistan affects no other country but China and Pakistan, and I think it's very important that China should press upon, like we do on Afghanistan, on Taliban, that they should help us, resolve these problems. Because unless we have peace in Afghanistan, unless we have addressed these issues of terrorism, unless we tackle this TTP factor, very effectively, I think going ahead with the CPAC and going ahead with Belt and Road Initiative would be a very difficult proposition. But I think China is already pressing hard on Taliban. We also have been requesting Taliban to help us, deal with this challenge. And I think there's no way out. There is just no way out. We will have to address this issue of TTP, who are effectively doing operations inside Pakistan. And when we say they have safe havens, they have safe sanctuaries in Afghanistan, it is right. And, of late we have seen that they were operating from Afghanistan. I think all this troika is mindful of the fact, and they need to address these issues at priority.
Right, Dr. Shabbir, another important point, another development that has just taken place, this particular call between US President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping of China. Now, both the sides have described this conversation. That is the first direct contact ever since November. Last time they met in California on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Both the sides have called it as a constructive, candid and in-depth discussions. As per the White House statement, the two leaders held a candid, constructive discussion on a range of bilateral, regional and global issues, including areas of cooperation and areas of difference. Specifically talking about the Chinese side, President Xi Jinping told the two countries should adopt a baseline principle of no clash and no confrontation for the year, and we should prioritize stability, not provoke troubles, not cross lines, but maintain the overall stability of China-US relations. As per your understanding, what's the significance of this particular phone call between the two leaders, given the fact there is an election year in the US?
Yes, I think I endorse the point raised by Mustafa regarding some kind of symbolic initiative by Biden government in the wake of coming elections. Because they have to give an impression to the American people that they are not very soft on China, but at the same time they need to engage with China also. Now there are two important factors. One is that like we face like India also uses this as election campaign, talking against Pakistan and talking of Pakistan all the time during election campaign. Similarly, now for America, I think China bashing or China focus in election is also very important. People, I think, would like to hear American leaders talking about China during the election campaign. But in my view, this conflict or the competition between the two countries will continue to grow because their interests are, there are interests which are not divergent. And secondly, there is an important thing that there is a corporate America and there is corporate China. There is a lot of complex interdependence between the two countries in businesses, in trade, and in various other corporate ventures. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, on both the countries by corporate America and corporate China to avoid such conflict because it will directly impact the business and the economy of both the countries. But this competition, because this competition is of global influence, and I think this global influence competition will also continue to grow because one power would like to stay and another power would like to be the superpower. So this competition will continue to grow, but I think there will be a sense prevailing in the corporate, both sides, corporate sectors. They would try to convince the decision makers to avoid such conflict whereby they can lose what they have gained over a period of time.
Right, Dr. Shabbir, how do you analyze this particular statement by President Xi Jinping that, let me quote it, if the United States insists on suppressing China's high-tech development and depriving China of its legitimate right to the development, we will not stay idly by, unquote. Dr. Shabbir, can you hear me, please?
Yeah. No, that is also a statement. This is a fair warning by President Xi Jinping, because definitely they have to tone it up because they just don't want. There are certain red lines drawn by China on the issues of maybe trade, maybe technology, maybe artificial intelligence, maybe technology, where they would definitely like to advance. So I think there is a red line drawn by Chinese leadership. And this is a step, or this is a measure of communicating to the Americans that, look, this is a red line, and don't try to push the red line. So I think this statement should be taken seriously by Americans. And in American scholarship, there's a feeling that let's not compete with China. Let's not do a conflicting.
Interjection over here, if you allow me. Dr. Shabbir, what sense do you make of this particular last part of this statement, that we will not sit idly by? By looking at this particular last part of this statement, what sort of options rest with the Chinese authorities as far as this high-tech development is concerned?
No, I would still like to comment, as this would definitely add to some kind of competition, some hard talks between the two countries. It may lead to a little softer Cold War also. That when China says they won't sit idle, but definitely they would stop short of war that world is looking at. I don't think so. These are the hot talks that they would continue, and they would continue to tell Americans, continue to reflect on what are their red lines, and of course they would try to communicate to them in the language, of course, which is a little harsher in the diplomatic domain.
Right, Dr. Talat Shabbir, Director at China-Pakistan Studies Center, ISSI. Thank you very much for joining in at Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Awan, now specifically talking about this call. Now, a U.S. official said that the call was meant to be more of a checking in and was not necessarily meant to achieve any policy breakthroughs.
If you allow me, should I say something about tech war between China and...
Please go ahead.
Yes, because I am scientist and I served in China as a
I just wanted to bring that point to
technology.
you later in the discussion. If you want to start off with that, please go ahead.
Yes. I was Counselor Science and Technology in People's Republic of China in Pakistan Embassy for 6 years. I know exactly what is happening in China in the field of science and technology. Chinese universities and research centers are very well equipped, and their government is investing heavily. China has almost surpassed the barrier, the threshold. China has deeply involved in research and development and innovations. In terms of science and technology, a country can be evaluated, or the yardstick of a country to measure their science and technology is number of research publication, which is China is much advanced than the Europe and America. The second parameter of measuring the science and technology status is the patent filed or registered. China has much more patents filed than the America and the Europe. Already China is the leader in several technologies, not all technologies. For example, in telecommunication, China is much advanced than the Europe and America, like the 5G, 5.5G, and now they are already matured the 6G technology in China. Same way, high-speed train, the China the global leader. In construction industry, they are the global leader. In many ways, they are the global leaders, much advanced than the Europe and America, not in every aspect. I think that China has surpassed the threshold where any country can coerce China or pressurize China. So they should know, if they restrict China acquiring the latest technology, American or European technology, China will develop its own. It is just matter of time. China might spend few years or maybe less or more, but will certainly develop its own technologies. Already Huawei, they have restricted, so they have developed their own microchips, and they are performing very well. So if they are forcing China, China will has already crossed that threshold. So it will be not effective.
So that is what exactly is meant by the last part of that statement by President
Yes,
Xi Jinping.
China will not stay idle.
We won't sit
Yes.
idly by.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what exactly
Yes,
you
that's
described. Mr. Syed, what's your understanding of that, this particular statement, and the kind of elaboration that has been given by Mr. Awan?
I think we see pushback from China. They have in the past, the state councillor, Mr. Wang Yi, has also called the behavior by the United States bullying, and so this is clearly pushback from China and President Xi on key core interests related to their economy, because they feel that China's peaceful rise, which is primarily economic, is being stunted by US coercion and US flexing its muscles through its multilateral partnerships and influence to stunt China's economic growth. And we see that the core #1 priority of President Xi Jinping is the sustained economic growth and sustaining the economic growth through 2024 as he has been re-elected for the coming years. So I think the target for the Communist Party of China Central Committee now is to maintain, sustain and enhance China's economic growth. And we saw that in 2 sessions of the parliament just culminated about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And in that 2 sessions, one of the key outcomes was also economic related, and the policy of dual circulation, which is President Xi Jinping's policy of making the Chinese economy a consumption economy, where the products that they often import are produced within China for the consumers within China.
So the significance of this particular phone call, as far as the purpose that has been described by one of the US officials, is to just check in, not to get any sort of a policy breakthrough. So it's just happening for the sake of happening.
I think the other thing is that apart from the US perspective, from the Chinese perspective, the Chinese also know that this president is on his way out, and they know that president
has got nothing much to offer.
He has nothing much to offer, and they also perceive it as a political, a symbolic engagement, and they know that President Trump is the likely president who is coming in to the White House. So they know that they know who they are dealing with, and they know how much time he has left in the White House. So I don't think they gave this phone call that due weightage. So I feel that the conversation of this phone call is less for each of them, but more for a larger audience who is observing and inferring and decoding.
So you already described the perspective of the US side because of the election year and because of that criticism coming from the Republicans. What about the Chinese perspective?
I think the Chinese perspective is to set clear red lines that we want to engage with you. We are very happy to engage with you, and that was shown by President Xi Jinping's visit to California on the invitation of the governor of California, who had visited Beijing before that to discuss climate change, etc., where China showed a very open approach to engage on all issues, and including Taiwan with the United States. But there are certain red lines and core issues, including economy and the rapid economic growth that China has achieved and that it has to continue at all costs, and no country or individual will be allowed to hamper that. And the second is, of course, China's territorial sovereignty, which includes Taiwan. So I think they have very clearly and reinforced in this phone call their core interests and red lines, that we will engage with you, but these are our red lines. Don't push us against the wall.
Right. Mr. Awan, are you of the same view that there was nothing much to be gained from this particular conversation? It was rather for the larger audience, as highlighted by Mr.
I endorse Mustafa's point of view, but one thing I will add, that China has a very stable policy. That is a friendship with every country. China is not hostile to any country in the world. Even that there were some hostile acts from the other side, China always shows patience and restraints, and never ever overreacted or reacted immediately or in haphazard giving any policy statement. China wants to engage with every country, but China knows its core interest and it will protect at any cost.
So how do you look at this particular statement when you talk about the issue of Taiwan? According to the White House statement, Biden has emphasized the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and the rule of law and the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
As a matter of fact, China has a one China policy. When the United States established relations with People's Republic of China, they have accepted one China, and they have almost finished the ties with Taiwan. The recognition, official recognition of the Taiwan. Of course, China is right. China is on the right path. That if any other interference is happening from the American to the Taiwan issue, is not accepted. That is the red line. And definitely, China and Taiwan are the same people, same ethnicity, same language. They have to reunify one day, sooner or later. The option is only one.
So what does that statement mean then? it emphasized the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and the rule of law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. What does that actually mean as far as the Chinese perspective is concerned, a statement of this sort coming from the US?
It is a part of policy of contain China, counter China, rise of China. That's part of that policy only.
And I just want to quickly add, when they say maintain peace in the Taiwan Strait, basically the United States, and as Mr. Zamir is very well aware, that Taiwan has been purchasing military equipment from the United States.
Okay, so that's very interesting thing. If Taiwan is purchasing that military equipment from the United States, but we know as a matter of fact that the US acknowledges that one China policy.
So it's a carrot and stick approach. So they keep the pressure on China. They don't recognize the Taiwanese government.
How can it sell weapons to Taiwan? That's could you elaborate?
So yes, that's a great point. So what the US is doing is that they maintain a low-key relationship without official diplomatic recognition, but they support economically, politically the government of Taiwan, which we consider as part of the People's Republic of China. And if you remember last year, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan, and which raised a lot of eyebrows and concern in Beijing, because there was also a violation in a way of the one China policy that the US acknowledges and admits to. So when they sell equipment, military equipment to Taiwan, who is that military equipment supposed to be used against? And secondly, Chinese government and Chinese military often patrol the Taiwan Straits because they consider this as part of their own territorial sovereignty and integrity, which the US often opposes and has also dominated through maritime and naval patrols by the United States to support and bolster Taiwanese government. So I think they have a carrot and stick approach, and this is one of the pressure points that the US uses vis-a-vis China.
Right. Mr. Awan, if the US doesn't recognize Taiwan, how can it sell weapons to it?
Of course, trade relations they can have with any country. I mean, diplomatic relations they cannot. Official relations they don't have. But trade relations and tourism and cultural relations they can have with any country.
Right. Mr. Syed already talked about that particular visit of
Nancy Pelosi.
Now, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is scheduled to visit China also next week, and also there is an expectation that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken might be also visiting China.
According to the agreement.
How do you compare both of these visits?
Yes. According to the agreement establishing relation with People's Republic of China, U.S. has surrendered the option of Taiwan. If they are doing these official state visits, that is a breach of that agreement. That is a breach of agreement.
What's going to be the significance, Mr. Syed, of this particular visit that is upcoming of Secretary Treasury Janet Yellen, and perhaps an upcoming visit by Secretary of State also?
I see it as a bargaining chip by the United States in dealing with China. As you know, that the biggest consumer of United States products and goods is the People's Republic of China. The most debt, I think around $3 trillion,
$3 trillion, yes,
that the US has is towards China. So they owe China a lot of money. So, and they have a trade war which was going on in the past, and it's all about economy. So I think that this is it's a tactical move by the United States, as I said, to exert pressure on China, which I don't think will work and which will probably worsen relations.
Right. Mr. Mustafa Haider here, the Executive Director of Pakistan-China Institute. Thank you very much for taking time
Pleasure.
out. And also Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan, a foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.